This is gonna be quite the video. What's up? My name's Dynasty, and I've been sitting on this topic for about a week and a half now. I wanted to tear into this when it first happened, but I wanted to see if there's any more, I guess you can say, changes to the story, any new additions, and really nothing much has happened since the news broke. But indeed, the future of Mortal Kombat might be in limbo because WB Games pretty much is selling their entire gaming division. So about a week and a half ago, CNBC broke the story, saying that in the initial reports, they had an insider source claiming that Warner Media, the company that pretty much owns the rights to, you guessed it, WB Games, is going to be selling their gaming division in an attempt to make some cash because they are $165 billion in debt. Now, there's three publishers who have been apparently showing some interest, those being Take-Two Interactive, EA, and Activision, and I believe there's also two other unnamed sources too. So what this means is that essentially whoever buys these WB branded companies, the actual studio will be sold, not necessarily the IPs that Warner Brothers owns. So for instance, just because NetherRealm is sold to EA doesn't necessarily mean EA owns the rights to Mortal Kombat. However, it does appear that WB Warner Brothers is willing to at least allow these new publishers to create their very own Mortal Kombat, Batman games, what have you, so long as they get like a percentage of the sales from those new games. So yes, this is probably the darkest timeline because say what you will about Warner Brothers, and how they've done some sketchy things in the past in, you know, the world of microtransactions, and let's not forget about how bad MK11 and the Crypt were at launch. Like, that was horrible, but, you know, if either of these other three companies, EA, Take-Two, or Activision, get a hold of NetherRealm Studios and somehow can make Mortal Kombat games, it's only gonna get worse. I'm sorry, but it is. EA has killed sports games, like legit killed them. A new game drops every year and they play the same as they played about, I don't know, 5 years ago. But hey, at least you get a new character on the roster, you know, on the depth chart. And don't even get me started on Ultimate Team and how Ultimate Team is just... I can't believe the amount of money that gets spent yearly by people I know on Ultimate Team, the microtransactions for that. Heck, the last big EA game that was, you know, meant to be a big deal was Anthem, and that thing died in like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 weeks. It's pretty much been universally considered a flop. As for Activision, just like EA, there's obviously a history of them being just as sketchy as EA because they usually take these small studios, they buy them out, and maybe they'll make one game with this new studio, and then they're like, oh, why don't you just work on making some Call of Duty DLC, because that's a guarantee money pit. So just, you know, hey, studio, I know you're making this great game, just instead put all your work towards a Call of Duty map. And microtransactions are in every Activision game at this point, right? I think, I don't know, it's not good. It's just like EA, it is just not good. Now, thankfully, there's, again, Take-Two Interactive, but again, this is Take-Two Interactive, trust me. GTA 5 was great, Red Dead was great, but can you imagine having to drop $60 on a NetherRealm Outworld Shark car to unlock an epic Scorpion skin in Mortal Kombat 12? Again, games that they make are relatively amazing and groundbreaking. They do take years to put together, but the online microtransactions are pretty disgusting, and that should be a concern. And just because the game single player is great, we shouldn't overlook the fact that these microtransactions are still really prevalent, and, you know, they're still really scummy. And, again, there are two other studios that, are apparently interested, and personally, I'm hoping that one of these studios is Microsoft, and trust me, I get it, I understand. Console-exclusive Mortal Kombat would piss off a ton of people. I get it. But I at least kind of feel like Microsoft would have enough money to keep the studio intact as it is without forcing them to, I don't know, focus on capitalizing their profits through microtransactions. I just really can't see that too much. I mean, look at the way they brought back Killer Instinct just a few years ago. And universally, that's still revered as one of like the better fighting games we've seen in a really long time. I mean, we could always have that Mortal Kombat and Killer Instinct crossover, right? So that's a thing. I mean, even more recently, we saw Sony do that with Street Fighter, and I mean, hey, that sucked for me as somebody who primarily plays on Xbox, but I could get it. I could understand. If Sony didn't step in, Street Fighter might have not been around too much longer. So I hope that one of these is Microsoft, just because, again, I feel like not much would change other than the fact that, you know, Mortal Kombat would become a console exclusive for the Xbox Series X. But if that means it saves Mortal Kombat from becoming a shell of itself, I am okay with that. I hope you guys are too. I hope you are. I hope you have more faith in Microsoft than you do EA, Activision, and Take-Two. But I digress. Regardless of what happens, this really isn't something I'd be thinking too positive about, but again, you never know. For instance, I guess if we're looking at things a half glass full, what if NetherRealm Studios is, you know, bought out by one of these big publishers like EA, like Activision, like Take-Two, but they're still given a solid maybe 2 to 3 years for a fighting game? And what if in between the time from, you know, Mortal Kombat 11 and Mortal Kombat 12, they work out a deal with Warner Brothers and are able to use the Mortal Kombat license, the property, to produce other Mortal Kombat games that aren't necessarily fighting games? What if this, if anything, creates more opportunities for more games like, I don't know, Shaolin Monks 2, an RPG-style Deception Conquest game? What if that means finally seeing Mortal Kombat on mobile? What if Chess Combat makes a comeback too? So again, as bad as this sounds, and trust me, this sounds really, 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 really bad, maybe we get a few positives out of this, and by no means is this what I expect, but I'm at least trying to seem somewhat 50-50 optimistic here. Obviously, nothing's guaranteed by any means, so again, time will tell, and we just have to wait and see what happens. Now, personally, I still think WB should hold on to Mortal Kombat as a franchise, because that's really a license to print money. They should be holding on to NetherRealm Studios. But again, I'm by no means an expert, and they're $200 billion in debt, so I guess they know what they're doing. I guess. I just hope that this doesn't change or doom the Mortal Kombat franchise or separates the current team at NetherRealm Studios, because honestly, they've been kicking ass since WB swooped them out of bankruptcy. Let's not forget, just over a decade ago, Midway Games filed for bankruptcy, and WB stepped in and saved the franchise that we love. So for that, again, it's just shocking to see they're so willing to part with it, because since they bought Mortal Kombat and NetherRealm, Midway, it's been nothing but positivity. But again, $200 billion in debt, and for what it's worth, too, what it's worth, they're looking to receive $4 billion back after selling their games division. So I don't see how $4 billion saves $165 billion, but again, I'm not an expert here. Thankfully, though, I think, at least universally now, I feel like these publishers understand that if a game is filled and just marketed and microtransaction-based, we don't stand for that. We don't anymore. I think going back to games like Battlefront 2 and games like Shadow of War, those games, man, it was so bad. And since their launch, obviously, they've had some major overhaul, and the games are great now. They're great. So I hope if a company does acquire a studio like NetherRealm Studios and can use the rights of a, you know, an IP like Mortal Kombat, they keep in mind that we've had MK9, MKX, MK11, Injustice 1, Injustice 2. That's 5 games since WB saved Midway, and all those games, despite them having obviously DLC content, and even more recently, I was not a fan of WB support not answering my question when I was asking, hey, when can we buy the DLC characters in the Aftermath individually? I never got a response to that, despite me asking time and time again. They finally revealed you could a couple of days ago, but again, that only took a solid month later. They could have just said, yeah, in a month you can, but they didn't. So even now, I still have a bone to pick with that. But for the most part, WB as a whole is pretty decent. They're pretty fair these days, and I do think if NetherRealm is sold to these other 3 companies, it only gets worse. And that's just my opinion. You guys can think I'm wrong, and that's fine. We all have our own opinions, but I know at least for me, I feel like WB is home for Mortal Kombat because they saved the franchise from bankruptcy and the death of bankruptcy. Who knows? He could have swooped in there and bought the license of Mortal Kombat. So, hey, WB did, and I do think they are the better option, which is why it sucks. This whole thing sucks, man. Really wish this was a false report, but again, this is CNBC who broke the story, and it seems legit. And if there's already talk about these other big publishers being interested, come on, there's got to be negotiations already taking place, and I still think Microsoft is the best option. They've got the money. They definitely do. Will they do it? Will they do it? Man, if Microsoft bought Mortal Kombat, that I feel like that is the only thing that is at least somewhat of a positive, optimistic approach, I think. But what do you guys think of this? Of course, let me know in the comment section down below. I am very curious to hear your feedback on this entire situation. Of course, if you did enjoy this video, please take 1 second and drop a like on it. And while you're here, if you are interested in playing Mortal Kombat 9 on PC, but you can't find it for sale on Steam, if you click the link in the description to G2A, one of the last few places you can actually purchase MK9 on Steam. So again, shout out to G2A for sponsoring this video. Till next time, I've been your host, Dynasty. Guys, please take care, stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
See, I've been a fan of Dynasty for years now. GTA, MK, and Justice, I'm still down. Rapper meets gamer, I wonder how y'all feel now. That was just a setup, watch it get real now. Okay, so me and Sub-Zero was born in 92, and lyrically I inherited all his fighting moves. A lot of y'all still lost, don't have the slightest clue. The truth disappears in the smoke, as if you